What's going on, guys, and welcome back. Discard is finally back and on top and is by far one of the best decks to play right now in Snap, and that's largely because it's the easiest deck to play probably in terms of meta, but also the deck's power is both extremely dependable and can easily compete with the best of them. Guys, season after season, this deck is just overlooked, overshadowed by the Marvel Snap community. The best example or metaphor I have is it's like Hawkeye in the Avengers. The dude just gets no love, right? But at the end of the day, in the midst of an alien invasion and, you know, while Hulk's playing catch with tanks and Iron Man's doing a 4th of July fireworks display and Thor's a freaking god and Captain America is playing the world's most dangerous game of Frisbee, good old Hawkeye here decides, nah, I'll use a weapon from 35 BC. Like, what a freaking legend. What the hell were we talking about again? Oh yeah, the discard archetype. So essentially, guys, if you've never been to Infinite before, I can give you a cozy certified guarantee that this is going to be the deck that can get you there. Very consistent. If you master how it plays and you stick with the deck, you're going to find yourself there. Now, we're going to start with the card combos, go to the decks, and then we'll end on a turn-by-turn. Starting off, guys, we have God's Mistake in MODOK. Now, he's going to go and be the core card of the deck. In my opinion, he's the main piece of the puzzle, and essentially, he is going to be the thing that all the other cards are trying to do, or they all want, and that is discarding your entire hand, right? He essentially eliminates just like bad early turn luck if you happen not to draw the right things, and at the same time, he comes with 8 power to boot. Next up is Apocalypse, and he's going to pretty much always be the same power as Hulk. He'll end up as a 12 power card, but he can even end up as like a 16, 20, 24 power card, and this is just one of multiple ways to get 20 plus power in the lane. Really good card and extremely straightforward. Next up is Morbius, and he's probably the best discard card. You're going to see a common theme today, and they're going to be called pressure cards. Now, Morbius is one of them, and essentially they are cards that are going to make your opponent question if they should contest that location because the power potential of the card. Even though this card has the downside of being predictable, it doesn't matter. It still puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. The card's power is just straight up stupid, right? I mean, he's going to be a 2-cost card, and oftentimes he'll be hitting 10 or 14 power pretty damn consistently, and really there's no downsides to him. Like, to make this even easier to understand, guys, if you have like Swarm, maybe Wolverine, and you play down MODOK on turn 5, you're going to get the same power as like freaking Infinite. Moving on, we have another great card in Swarm, guys, and this is going to be another MVP of the deck. You know, essentially, you're going to have 2 to 4 free plays up to about 12 power, which is incredibly clutch to flood the board. Now, oftentimes, you're only losing a lane by a few power, right, in Marvel Snap. And this is a way to kind of like allow you to spread out into multiple lanes and or just take advantage of different locations like Altar of Death. You can challenge something on Rickety Bridge. You can get more +5s on Nidavellir. There's a lot of different situations and pros to having multiple cards. Moving on, we have Colleen Wing, who I'm sure most of you who don't watch Marvel, you're like, who the hell is this? She's the stat queen in Marvel Snap. She's a 2/4 that is always going to be typically like a 210 or 212 on value because of what you get from Swarm or Wolverine combined with Morbius. Now, she's the best bang for your buck as far as discard goes and provides one of the most valuable traits, and that is being a targeted discard. Essentially, you know exactly what you're going to discard. There's no risk involved. Next up is Dracula. If you don't know, one of the best cards in Snap. Can't be countered. We've talked about him before. He's going to be 16, 20, 24 power. Essentially, guys, you can set him and forget him. He's best played after Storm. You can go and save him for like a post-Galactus play where they can't counter or Shang-Chi you, or just put him in a lane by himself. You know, he's another pressure card, and that lane is usually going to be enough, maybe a Swarm on top, to win. Now we continue on with Lady Sif, another targeted discard option to go for things like your Apocalypse. That's the main use of her in the deck. You know, she doesn't help out with Swarm, but she has other uses. If you want to try Ghost Rider out, definitely great value there for something like Infinite. You can also use her with Helicarrier, very solid combination as well. Doesn't have the same, you know, power to cost as, let's say, Colleen Wing has, but very dependable, and the more options that you have that you know what you're going to discard, the better. Really, even just that one extra discard on Apocalypse can be enough to kind of push you over the edge to win the game because you're boosting up Morbius, and then your Dracula plays even bigger. And lastly, as far as the core cards, we have America Chavez. Now, I know what you're saying. You know, I don't want to play America Chavez. This is a discard. I want to have another discard option. You're wrong. I'm just letting you know I've played so many games of discard, thousands. And I can tell you, Chavez is in most of the best decks because of the consistency of the card draw that she gives you, but at the same time, obviously, if you play MODOK, you have a dependable card there, and on top of that, you're obviously going to take advantage of Dracula having the option to play, you know, something like Apocalypse or Chavez or the Swarms. There's a lot of things going on, and Chavez provides more than one role in the deck, which is pretty much always what you're looking for in Marvel Snap. Now, moving right along, we have the discarders. These are the other quote-unquote discard-focused cards that you can plug in. I'm going to discuss them quickly so you know their role, and you can kind of pick and choose what you like. Everybody has a different style because of the way that discard plays. First, we have Moon Knight, who's like in that field of a badass variant. Super cool, right? Cool hero, but not the best, right? Kind of the same as Shadow King in a sense. Moon Knight is cool. I've tried to make him work a lot of times. He does work in different, scenarios. You can mess up your opponent's combo and discard their Galactus or Null or something like that. But at the same time, you can pair him up with something like Stature, and that's always a nice little combo. He isn't always needed. Again, he does provide a little casino play, but if you have Ghost Rider in the deck, I like him a lot more. The turns and discard are very linear, and you only have turn really 2 and 3 to do things. So Moon Knight does fit that turn 3 nicely. Moving on to, I can't believe this is a freaking Marvel character, Hellcow. And essentially, guys, you're going to discard 2 cards, and it has a 4/6 value. So a really good power to get out there if you don't get Dracula to play on turn 4. You can get double Swarm discards. That's awesome. However, you got to know something about Hellcow. And I got to tell you, it irks the hell out of me and why I don't play the farm animal that much. On reveal, discard 2 cards from your hand. Awesome, right? So it gets rid of Apocalypse. Yeah, awesome. It doesn't do it twice. It only does it one time because it's not 2 cards, it's 1 card. So I don't love the cow for that, but it is included in some of the best discard decks in terms of win rate and cube rate because of the possibilities of building up Morbius and your Swarms. Now, briefly, we have both Blade, who is kind of that casino card. Some people love him. He's only 1 cost, and he can serve a purpose. Kind of fill out the decks if you're not playing, let's say, Sunspot or something. Blade typically isn't included in the best discard decks, just there's other options. It's about scaling late rather than early plays. And Gambit, man, I love Gambit. You can certainly play him. He just doesn't fit in the core build, again, because, what if he gets rid of your MODOK or Morbius? You just significantly hurt your chances of winning. Now, here's a graphic of some other winners I want to talk about and the ones that you're going to likely be putting in your discard deck. You have Nebula and or Sunspot. Almost always one of these will be in a prime spot in your deck. Because, again, pressure cards, right? They kind of work with others like Morbius and Dracula, especially with these paired with Storm. Even better because, good luck to them. Collector is recently buffed and is finding his way into more and more decks. And, in fact, he could be a core card if you have the cards to associate with the Collector. Oftentimes, he's going to be a 2/7, a 2/9, really solid stats overall. And you can kind of just set him down again like these other cards like Morbius and build him up later. Look, guys, I swear to you, I'm not always trying to push Coulson on you, but he does work in the deck for 2 reasons. Number 1, Collector's going to get more power if you do play him in a Collector's deck, but also more cards for Morbius to gain after MODOK discards them. So I do like Agent Coulson a lot. Agent 13, they do have a place in the deck, and you get to use one of the best variants in the game. Look at this guy. Now, Wolverine. I know, Wolverine is awesome. He is in so many prime discard decks. There's, like, no downside to him. I do have him as a flexible option because he can mess up, your 50-50 chances with Swarm. But overall, really good card. If you play MODOK, you get even more value. Now, I don't know about you guys, but we all, love a card every now and then. Ghost Rider's the love that I always try to make work. I have played and won multiple games with Ghost Rider, and I've also wished I didn't get him as well, right? He's good because you can play more of those unsafe discard options. You can play Swordmaster, Moon Knight, Gambit, and then Ghost Rider kind of protects you from that. So I do like him. He's even better with all these Black Bolt and Stature decks running around. So very good option here. However, his main issue, guys, sadly, is Swarm and Apocalypse and Wolverine. These cards, they're not getting discarded. Well, Swarm is, but then the value's trash, right? So that's what makes him really funky. If you don't play those style of decks, which is just a worse style discard, then, definitely play him with Helicarrier and Hela and all that. Now, here are all the other options that you could maybe use, like a tier down per se. And you have your casino options like Hela or Lockjaw. They serve different purposes. More fun and good at cubes rather than wins. You have your cheeky options. Black Cat, people try to use a lot. Isn't terrible. Again, Ghost Rider, this is a good natural combination. Mystique is really cool with Morbius, but also not if you don't grab her or, wind you players sometimes. But if you can pull off the Morbius and Mystique, really good value. Nakia, if you build up the Swarms and you can get them at +5, you're getting 20 plus power. Awesome stuff. And then Black Bolt and Stature, who I find really don't work in the deck all that much, but you can just slot in Stature and Moon Knight and Ghost Rider as a triple combo, really solid stuff there. Moving on, we have one of the best, most crazy cards to snap in Iron Lad. Yeah, I like most of the cards he can copy in this deck. You know, if you get Nebula, Dracula is absolutely bonkers. And then obviously if you get Morbius, even more crazy. Combined with the solid stat line, kind of a very dependable card. And then we have Howard the Duck, which I think is awesome. He does fit with more Hela-style decks. We'll get to that later. All right, now that pretty much covers the cards. Before we move on to the decks, I want to go and just show this. I thought it was kind of cool. This is the popularity of discard options. And so you can see kind of the main offenders are core cards. If anything, like MODOK and Dracula only have less than 100 because of just their exclusivity. But then we have things like America Chavez, 95%. Colleen Wing's 92. Wolverine is at that 78. Some people like him with the 50-50. Some people don't. Storm is super common. I mean, way up there above even like Swordmaster, Hellcow, those options. The Collector is slowly rising now that he got buffed up. I think it's a pretty solid add. You just have to build the deck a little more around him. And then you have things like Moon Knight and Blade with data not even showing on other cards like Ghost Rider. Now let's go transition, guys, over to the best decks in discard, the ones you should definitely be playing in terms of data for win rate and cube rate, as well as just like the ones I enjoy playing. Apocalypse decks are typically the way you want to go. I've thought about doing some Hela craziness. I want to make a Hela guide, but I don't know. Is this something you guys would want to see? It would be, you know, more for the memes, but also Hela can be a fun time to climb if you're bored. Now, moving into the decks, we're going to just look, and you guys know it by now, but this is the deck shell, right? And why I'm showing this is because we have 8 cards here, and that means typically you have 4 other cards that you can kind of mess around with in your discard deck. So if you want to go with the Collector, then maybe you want to go and add other options that can add to Collector. Or you can go Storm and some one-cost drops. You can go with like a Hela option. You can add Wong with MODOK and get some crazy Swarm stuff going. There's a lot of different paths, and I've tried pretty much all of them over tens of hours of play. But the ones we're going to go through are the most dependable. And that's kind of what I want to say, is that discard is a lot like Sarah Control. There's not a lot of room to change out cards because of what you need to do in each turn, and we'll go by that after the decks in the turn-by-turn guide. So I thought it'd be pretty cool to look at the top performers in both cube and win rate terms of data. This is looking at 2,000 games. That's a large sample size, and this is surprisingly is the best cube average for any discard deck you can play at the moment, utilizing Sunspot and Iceman. Now, I'll say the data with Nebula is almost the same, if that makes a difference for Sunspot. But as you can see, it's just very targeted and dedicated. Now, the Swordmaster definitely surprised me, but I think it's all about when you play him and how risky it is to play him. Definitely much better value if you don't pull MODOK or even Apocalypse. Gives you just more power points on the board and can be a bit more surprising. The Iceman, I think, is a large part of the more cube wins here, just because you're going to be messing up their combo cards, but still overall keeping that solid flow of power that discard can do. Now, again, going by the data, we look at our win rate MVP, and you can see this deck is just all about how many swarms can you get under one bucket, as well as just getting good stats with Swordmaster, Hellcow. You've got the Dracula, MODOK. Just kind of no matter what kind of draw you get, you're going to have good, dependable power on the board. You have Nebula to create pressure. You have Morbius to create pressure. MODOK, Wolverine to get to the hard-to-reach locations. Swarms to just flood the board. Kind of everything that discard offers under one package. Now, lastly, we finished with a couple of decks here. We have Discard Collector. After the newly buffed Collector, we have a deck here that just focuses on building up the power numbers on the Collector. Swarm can get to ridiculous numbers, and you can do Wong in the deck. You can have Hellcow. The decks are not as consistent and not even close. We're talking 5 to 10% win rate different. They're more fun. They can create cooler clips, but as far as dependent Collector decks go, this is the discard one you're probably going to want to play. Now, you note we do have Helicarrier in the deck. You know, the only thing here is it can mess up your Dracula at the end if you don't get rid of the cards, if you get some weird cards. But it can also give you some really nice options and just overall flexibility if you don't know what to play or you don't have things on curve. Now, lastly, guys, to close off the decks, this is going to be the deck that I personally play with Iron Lad. He has a lot of value here. Not too many cards that he can clone or copy that doesn't do something for you. If he gets Morbius, Collector, Nebula, all those are awesome. Colleen Wing with Swarms is a great copy as well. And then you know you're getting another one. Dracula can be huge. You could get multiple Apocalypse copies. And then if you don't get MODOK on 5, you have one more chance for a roll with Iron Lad. So some really cool synergy with the deck. It's been pretty dependable. I've done also obviously Howard the Duck in here as well, but I've got a whole nother video for that. But this is definitely one that if you do have Iron Lad, I would give it a shot. All right, now let's hold your hand and teach you exactly how to play discard, right? So essentially, guys, with the deck, the core premise you want to nail down is you want to set out to contest multiple locations and lanes from your early turns, really turns 1 through 4, not filling any one lane too much and leaving space for Swarm and all the plays that you'll do after turn 5. So keep that in mind for your MODOK play and all that when we do talk about each turn. Starting off, we have turn 1, and this is going to look a lot different for many decks depending on the option that you went for the slot. Nebula is very popular at the moment, and Sunspot, those are your 2 best options, most likely. But heck, you could do Blade here, Howard the Duck, whatever floats your boat for your 1-cost card. Or if you didn't build your deck to be lower curve, you can just skip this turn entirely and you're going to be fine. Moving on, we have turn 2, and this is probably one of the more important turns. It's important to note, guys, really this turn and next turn are the only linear turns, giving you some flexibility. After that, it's very straightforward. You don't want to mix things up too much. Your win rate's going to go down if you do. Turn 2, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're going to play Colleen Wing if you have Swarm in hand or Wolverine. This is obviously the play you should do. Or you don't want to do it if you have Morbius. At that point, you'd rather just play Morbius down. And then next turn, you can play Colleen Wing. It's not worth taking the 50-50 most of the time, and it just depends on your hand. And then finally, you can also play the Collector. I put Collector down most of the time before Morbius. Morbius is ongoing. He'll always have his power. The sooner you get Collector out, the better. And so putting him out now is usually the choice. Moving on to turn 3, we have by far our most flexible turn. There's so much you can do here, but priority-wise, I would almost always finish playing Colleen Wing and Swarm or play Morbius down if you haven't done that. Other than that, you want to go and play Storm to lock off a location that you'll follow up on turn 4. You could play Lady Sif here if you have Apocalypse to build him up, or Helicarrier. You could play Swordmaster and Moon Knight on this turn, so a lot of flexibility in what you want to decide. Or just play Collector if you played Morbius down, or vice versa. Now, lastly on this turn, if you're playing any of these other alternative cards like Agent Coulson and you play Collector, obviously this would be the turn that you would do so. All right, guys, turn 4 is one of 2 things. Now, it's almost always, and I do mean always, Dracula. You're going to play Dracula on your flooded location in a lane by himself. Whatever your opponent's doing, remember, just spread your power out wide. You could play one of your 3-cost discard options, followed by Nebula on that Storm lane. You could play Ghost Rider down if you got a nice discard from Lady Sif. Now, obviously, Hellcow is a good thing to do usually on this turn if you're playing that version of the deck. Typically, you want to try to get as many swarms as possible, but do be careful. You don't want to clog yourself, and then you have swarms in hand, and then Dracula takes one of those swarms, and you lose. We've all been there. You don't want to find yourself in that situation. A lot of different options here, but again, you always want to go with the core value of Morbius, because almost always, next turn is going to be MODOK, right? You're going to lose all these. They're all going to die, so you got to get them out now. Turn 5, MODOK. Yep, just MODOK, guys. That's all you should be doing. Play MODOK in the lane that he needs to be in the most, and whether that's, helping out Morbius if you think they have Enchantress, or if you want to put him in his own lane, or a lane that they just don't expect. You'll get better as you play, but MODOK is one of the big, important cards on where you place him. Now, if you don't have MODOK, this is where you play Dracula if you haven't played him, or you just get as much power out as possible. Now, if you don't have MODOK, your odds of winning have gone down significantly. And the biggest thing, for the love of God, guys, America Chavez is coming next. You're not going to get that combo piece, and you want to make sure if Dracula's on the board that you have high power only, so play out your cards according to so. Turn 6, you'll be getting Chavez, and this is kind of one of 2 things you'll be doing on this turn mainly. You're going to look at the board, you're going to look at your opponent, you're going to predict what they're playing, and you're going to decide one of 2 things. Do you need Dracula to discard Apocalypse, which is usually yes. Would playing Apocalypse by himself, like if you stormed a location and already won that, win you that location and you just need the pure power? And where are you going to be placing your swarms? So what I like to do is always obviously dedicate Chavez and your swarms first. This is usually the safest play. Put Chavez on a lane you know you're going to win. Dracula's going to take care of the other lane. Maybe throw on some swarms on top of Dracula or Morbius's lane if you can do so. And that's typically enough to get the job done. Always keep in mind, when you do have the Dracula discard, if you somehow get multiple, it's going to be fine. He can get Apocalypse a couple of times. but also it does count as a discard slice. And so Morbius is going to get +2 power. Be sure to add that in your noggin whenever you're kind of competing with the opponent's power compared to yours. Now let's end the turn by turn with Win to Snap. Now, if you draw MODOK and you have Morbius and maybe Apocalypse, you're going to snap. This is like a turn 3, turn 2 snap. No question. If you have Swarms and Apocalypse and MODOK, that's a simple snap as well. There's a lot of really obvious snaps, but I would say Swarm, APOC, MODOK, and Morbius. A couple combinations of those guys, and you're typically good to go. So that concludes our guide. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Again, be sure, just master the deck, learn the ins and outs, learn when to retreat. Don't stay when you don't need to. It's okay if you didn't get Morbius, back out of there. If you barely lost a game, just learn what happened and what to do next time. Super solid deck, and it kind of inspires me to do Hela. But let me know down below if you want to see a Hela discard guide. Guys, we're trying to get to 100,000 by the end of June, and so if you haven't already and you come back and like these deck guides, be sure to subscribe down below. Helps out a ton. And as always, we have another one coming for you soon. And until the next one, happy snapping.